I'm going to call this meeting to order. The first item on our agenda this afternoon is public comment. Josh, who is our first commenter? There's Kim.
Absolutely. Yep, we have Kim joining us. And the first public comment that I received, we actually received two comments from the same individual, Paula Myers of 57 Country Club Road, whose phone number, if you'll help me find it, the last four digits are 9467. 9467. Paula, you are now unmuted if you would like to give your comment.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
we
we
can.
can.
Thanks. This is odd. So I'm not quite used to it, so bear with me. I don't know whether you guys know it or not. I don't know if you guys know it or not, but I have publicly on Facebook commented in the past a couple of times that I think you guys have done a great job as far as the coronavirus goes, both in keeping this town safe and as well as keeping us informed. And I don't know, what happens behind the scenes, if you guys are working well as a group or if it's all one person, but I don't really care as a citizen. I do feel I need to start by telling you guys that I do think that you guys are doing a good job. Before coming here tonight, I went through the Board of Selectmen minutes just since the election and saw that you guys have had good discussions. You seem philosophically on the same page in terms of the direction of the town. And except for one vote, most of your votes have been unanimous with a couple of abstentions. However, I came here tonight to express my opinion about what happened on Facebook over the Memorial Day weekend. I'm sure you guys have probably all heard about the incident that happened on the Green during the filming of the Memorial Day service, but I'm not really here to talk about that specifically because no one can publicly comment about what happened on the Green or how it was handled except for the people who actually were there to witness it. No one knows if the situation was handled appropriately or not, so I'm not going to comment on that. Except for the people that were there, obviously. One of the gentlemen that was there involved in the Green posted about the incident on an unofficial Bolton Facebook page. And while that was just one side of the story, it was something he had every right to do. People commented on that one side of the story, which was also their right to do. People were upset about their perception of how the first selectman handled the situation, as was their right to do. And although I'm sure you were all aware of the decisions that were made leading up to the parade being canceled and the filming of the memorial, it is expected that Sandy would take the brunt of the heat that is unfortunately part of the first selectman's job. I'm sure there were mistakes made, and I'm expecting that mistakes were made, so I'm not really going to talk about that either. What I want to comment on is what happened after that. The comments that were made in an unofficial Bolton Facebook site that accepts comments regardless of the truth. People are not required to be respectful. Those are the rules, and the people who post on that page accept those rules. However, the comments turned ugly, and there were personal attacks on Sandy as well as the townspeople against townspeople. But then the comments started attacking the first selectman's character, that she did not respect vets, that she did some of this for political gain, and a mistake that was made on her own personal Facebook page was then posted, and people thought she wanted people to get the coronavirus. Being informed that it was a mistake didn't seem to matter. The reason I'm here is to express my extreme disappointment in the silence that came from the other four selectmen. I'm not here for political purposes because I'm equally disappointed in both the two Democrats as well as the two Republicans, and here's why. What I'm disappointed about is given the fact that you know that Sandy the best as a working capacity for the town, in seeing how she behaves and how she votes with respect to the interests of this town, not one of you stepped up to defend her character. Whether or not you personally witnessed the interaction, you still could have spoken to her privately based on what you heard happened. If you felt she needed to improve in that respect or to get her side of the story, that would have been perfectly appropriate. Tell her how she could have done it better. Tell her she could have been more tactful or more authoritative or done it in interpreter's dance. I don't care. But when her character was maligned, not one of you came to her defense publicly, given that you all appear to be somewhat aligned philosophically when it comes to voting for the most part. Does one person on this board really believe that Sandy wishes people of this town to get coronavirus? Does one person on this board believe she wanted to limit the people who attended the tape segment for some personal gain? Does one person on the board not believe she would have told me or anyone else to get off the Green for the safety of others? I didn't see anything prior to the minutes that indicated justification for the type of character assassination that took place on Facebook. There appeared to be a couple of people who really wanted to stir the pot and kept bringing it up even when it started to die down. There was intent to do her harm, sending it to the newspaper. Is that the way you want Bolton to be in the newspaper, in the news? It was clear that someone wanted this to go viral. Is that what you guys would have wanted? I think I counted about 340-ish comments on this topic. Regardless of your political differences, how in the world could you stand by and allow people in town to attack your colleague's character and not say a word? You could have spoken up. Maybe you wouldn't have stopped all of the awful posts, but you could have tempered it down. Instead, it was Adam Teller who did your job for you. While he did a great job, it would have been far more effective coming from you, or even better, coming from all four of you as united. As leaders of this town, the people of this town needed someone to step up and stop not only the character assassination, but the personal attacks that neighbors were doing on each other. All four of you let not only Sandy down, but you let the town down as well. I was on the Board of Ed for 8 years. Every year, we had the ugliest of partisan fights over the board, over who was going to be board chair. I'm sure you guys know all about it. We had a chair that at times could be controversial. As you know, that at times was publicly insulted. It wasn't often on Facebook because we were all relatively new to Facebook at the time, but usually it was in person. But the times when her character was taken into question, time and again, I witnessed every person on the board, Republican or Democrat, publicly say, hey, hold on a second. And while we don't always agree on some things, this person does not deserve what you just said. That is leadership. Privately, the discussions were very different about how things could have been handled differently, but publicly, personal insults were not tolerated. This issue has bothered me since Memorial Day, especially in light of the nation's national events this past week. While we don't have issues that maybe other towns and states do, we still have injustice in this town. And when we don't stand up for the little ones, how in the world will we stand up for the big ones? I tried to give the benefit of the doubt. While I've seen at least 3 of you post on Facebook in the past, maybe you aren't on Facebook anymore. Fair enough. No one expects you guys to be experts on social media, but you do need to keep yourself informed on what's happening in the town in a timely manner. You have spouses, children, friends who told you about it. You could have written something out and asked them to post. If the only way you get information is from emails from your party leaders, then the only people you are serving is your party leaders. I mean this for both sides. You cannot make decisions for what's best in the town when you don't know the town, and ignorance of the event is no excuse. We didn't elect you to sit in a bunker like a monkey covering your ears, mouth, and eyes. We elected you to lead. If you can't bother to step up when a colleague that you know is unfairly treated, whether she is the same or a different political party, why in the world would I believe you would step up for someone's neck getting knelt on when the color of their skin is different, or their sexual orientation is different, or their religion is different? I don't know any of you personally any more than I know Sandy, except through your work in the town. I truly thought every single one of you was better than this. So even if you don't know of the character assassination, now you are here and I've brought it up. The very next words that come out of your mouths will say volumes about your own character and your own leadership. I do not expect you to defend the actions of the first selectman on the green or how she handled it. If you weren't there, you can't. But I do expect you to comment on whether you truly believe a colleague you know intended to not let people honor vets or wants people to get the coronavirus. This nation, this state, and this town needs healing, and it can start one person at a time, and it can start with you.
Thank you, Paula, for your comments. Is there anyone who would like to comment on Paula's? Mike?
Yeah, I got to admit, I joined Facebook the other day because I heard what was going on. I'm not a social media individual. And I will say, Paula is right, 100% correct. We should have done something different as a group. I should have done something different as an individual. Why I may not agree with what the first selectman did. Sandy has done a lot for this community, and that far outweighs any one individual event that some of us may not have liked. I think we owe her a debt of gratitude for the years of service she's given and done very well by our community and by this board. So I will apologize for not stepping forward with an apology to you, Sandy, right now.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. That does take character. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and this is Kim Miller, and I will do the same. I very much agree with what Paula said, and I apologize. I am on Facebook. I did see the initial, post complaints about it. To be honest, I hadn't followed it, so I apologize for that, because you're right. As a officer of this town, I really should be following in more detail those types of things, and also stepping up for Sandy, because I don't think there's anyone who wouldn't agree that Sandy is probably one of the most dedicated people that we have working in this town on one of our boards, and the amount of time that she puts, I'm always amazed by. So I also apologize, Sandy, and next time I will do better.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you, Kim.
Well, my response is simple. First of all, Paula, I have been off of any of those Facebook sites for a number of years, and I refuse to go back onto them. Have been totally trashed on those sites
You know what it's like. Yep, I get that.
by some of your cohorts, and there you are. I took it and just dealt with it. That was part of the job. And Sandy's a tough lady. I'm sure she's can handle it well. And my not commenting on there had nothing to do with any respect or disrespect I have for our first selectman. Is simply, I honestly consider most of Facebook nothing more than a flowing sewer, and I simply will not lower myself to enter. And those are my comments.
And Paula, I'd like to share with you that Bob DiPietro did reach out to me privately to check in with me. So although
Bob.
he was not on Facebook, he did reach out privately. So thank you, Bob DiPietro. Paula,
Thank you,
did
guys.
you have something else you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, real briefly, when I was looking at the minutes of the meetings from the past, something came up to me that I've seen time and again, and that I thought, since I'm going to be here anyway, I just wanted to bring it up. As far as abstentions go, over the last few years, I've seen more and more people using abstentions instead of voting. And there's strong public policy that members of a legislative body take a position and vote. There are two general rules for why you can abstain. One is for real or perceived conflict, and the other is if you weren't there for discussion. So in those cases, it's perfectly appropriate when you are approving minutes. If you weren't there for the meeting, then yes, you would abstain from that. But there have been, I've seen in all the boards in town, minutes where people, there's been discussion. It's a difficult discussion, and people can see both sides of it, and I absolutely respect that. You can see, in fact, I appreciate that you can see both sides of it, but they don't want to make a decision or can't make a decision for various reasons. And what you're supposed to do is ask for information and be specific as to what information you need, and then the rest of the board can either say, we'll wait to vote until you get the information, or we'll call the question and you have to make a decision now. But either way, you need to vote. Most people will vote no if they don't get their information, depending on how the question's worded. But I think I'm asking the board, the first selectman, and basically all of you. And I'm not picking you guys particularly, but I've seen this on the Board of Ed. I've seen it in the Board of Finance, and more people forget that we elected them to make decisions, even if they're not right. You learn from them. You do the best, as long as you're doing the best for the town. I get that you'll get beat up because unfortunately that's the way we are, but please stop abstaining if you were there for the discussion. Please take a stand, do the best you can, and we'll appreciate you for that. So I'm asking that you guys hold each other accountable to at least put in the minutes if somebody's abstaining as to why they're abstaining, so we can know.
Hey, Paula, can I respond to you on that? If you go back
Sure.
3 to 5 years, I venture to say you won't find more than 2 or 3 times this has happened. This is not.
I agree. I agree.
Then listen, please. Since you've been rather critical this evening, I think it's important that you understand this board does make decisions, makes hard decisions, and from either party. We figured that's our job. And I don't want to speak for everyone, but I know everyone here has made decisions, tough decisions, yes or no. If someone's made a decision not to vote, it has been for good reasons. And
Okay, and all I'm asking is that you put that in the minutes what the reason is, so that we can know if there was a conflict or if we can know if the person wasn't there. I've seen it come up more often all across the town when I'm looking at minutes. Honestly, I have not looked at your minutes probably ever, except for when I was looking at it for this since the beginning of the year, and I saw one and it jumped out at me, and I didn't see a reason why, except for minutes. Minutes, I don't seem to care. Obviously, people weren't there, and because it jumped out at me, and I'd seen it on the Board of Ed when people voted for a budget and. They were there for the discussion and didn't vote for or against the budget. They abstained even though they were there for the discussion because they didn't want to be seen as, I'm perceiving it. I don't know the reason why they didn't, but, approving something, an increase in expenses. So all I'm saying is that it's difficult. Nobody wants these things to make these decisions, but just to at least put it in the minutes if somebody's going to abstain.
Okay. Kim, did you have something else you wanted to say?
Are you talking to me?
Kim Miller, yes.
Oh.
I was just going to explain sort of why I abstained last time, because I think, to Bob's point, it doesn't happen often. And the last discussion was, we had the discussion. It was clear 3 people were for and 1 was against. I hadn't decided. I didn't want to waste the board's time having a discussion that was unnecessary, because no matter what my decision was, it was going to pass. That was the reason I abstained. I'm happy to continue in the future if that's the preferred mechanism, but that was my reason for abstention, Paula.
I appreciate it, and that would have been fine to put in the minutes, because when I read it, it makes it look like you didn't want to take a position. And
no, it was that I didn't have enough information, but I didn't want to waste time, given that the decision was clearly already made. So everyone else had made decisions, so that was why.
Mike,
thanks for clearing that up.
Paula, I think that you'll find that this board and probably the previous board, you'll find, as you said, very, very, very few instances where we weren't unanimous. And I think that's because we have discussed and
and that's impressive.
And we have come to a conclusion where, for the most part, we all agree. There are a couple instances where I abstained and Sandy asked me the reason, and the reason should be in the minutes. And the reasons were good because it had a personal conflict kind of thing. Those I know should be natural abstentions, but I think you're going to find, as Bob said, maybe 1 or 2 a year other than minutes, and I actually.
So I must have just caught it on a bad time. That's all. Yeah, and that's fair enough.
I would commend this board for it, and I say it to many people as I go throughout the state, and I talk how I don't remember the last time we weren't a unanimous decision. This is the best working board I've been on in quite a while, so we seem to get along fairly well, and we think pretty much alike. And I dare you to look at our discussions and figure out which one's a Democrat and which one's a Republican.
No, I agree. I agree with that. And like I said, I posted on Facebook that I thought you guys have been doing a great job. And I've said both parties.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. Since I don't go on Facebook, I appreciate that. Thank you.
And I wish I hadn't joined last week for one day.
Yeah, that's probably not wise.
No,
I've been looking for an excuse to get off, but I can't figure out how to still get information.
That's the problem. My wife gives me the information. So
Bob DiPietro, do you have your hand up? Okay. I want to give the speech to those of you who are listening on the phone again. If you missed me earlier, we have adopted a new public comment procedure so that we are certain if there's anyone on the phone whose phone is muted and in listen-only mode wishes to participate in the meeting, you may go on the town website, bolton.govoffice.com, click on the link and register there, or you may send an email to townadmin@bolton.govoffice.com, right?
Just boltonct.org, actually.
Oh, okay, thank you. Bolton.
No problem.
Townadmin@boltonct.org. and we will recognize you. We do have one other commenter who has registered, Mary Terhune, of 9664, last 4 digits. Mary, are you on the call?
Sandy, I've been scanning for the last few minutes and I am not seeing her on the call, but she did give a comment on the form online. So if it's all right with you, I can just read that into the record.
Certainly.
She stated, "How thankful I am for the hard work of all the town employees, the town administrator, and all the boards during this pandemic. Everyone has had to adjust and they have done it professionally under the strong leadership of the first select person. She has worked tirelessly, making hard decisions to keep the health and safety of our community as the goal." And that was all.
Okay. Have you received any other requests for comment, Josh?
At this time, no.
Okay. Moving on, I do not believe we have any appointments this evening. If there is anyone on the call who is interested in serving on a board or commission, please reach out to the town website and look at vacancies for boards and commissions, or you can email townadmin@boltonct.org, and we will be sure that you get a list of available slots. Correspondence, I have none. Josh, do you? Okay. Moving on. We are now on.
Approval of minutes?
I'm sorry?
Don't we have the approval of the minutes?
Oh, you're right. Thank you so
Sorry.
much. Gee whizzikers. Approval of the minutes of our meeting of May 5th. I do have some corrections. They are on page 8 and 9. On the bottom of page 8 in item 10, under COVID-19 preparations, it should say Pirog appointed, and Carrie's last name is spelt Concatelli. And moving on to my other correction on page 10, under item B, administrators' goals. It should say Mark Walter, Town Administrator of Columbia, which Josh's version does say. Does anyone else have any additions or corrections to those minutes?
No.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I did vote on some, I didn't vote somewhere, but I think page 2, but it did voted with the majority there. Somewhere.
Page, oh, I move the Board of Selectmen approve the minutes of March 3rd.
Yeah, thanks.
So we need to add Bob DiPietro to the top of
Yes.
page 2.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Any other additions or Bob Mora?
No, I was just going to move the adoption of the minutes as corrected.
Is there a second? Is that a second?
I
Mike?
second.
Oh.
Let Kim second it.
Okay. Kim seconded it. All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the minutes?
Under reports and updates, number 6, is that correct? The 5 centers, it says something about 5 centers per, where?
Oh, 5 cents.
You're right, Bob. It should be 5 cents per
Cents.
kilowatt hour. Yep.
Thanks.
Good catch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'll include that correction in my motion.
Kim, as seconder, are you
Yep.
okay?
I'm okay. Yep, thank you.
Very good. All right, all those in favor of the minutes as corrected?
Aye.
5 cents, not
Aye.
5 centers. Okay. That was unanimous. Moving on to reports and updates. Excuse me. The Public Facilities and Public Safety Committee has held 2 meetings, one on May 5th, 2020, and the other today, concerning the virtual net metering proposal. We've talked to an individual who has presented us a proposal, and today we spoke with a potential consultant to advise us through the process. And as a result of that, those two, we're reaching out to a second consulting firm for an additional opinion, I guess is a good word, and proposal for doing that. And subsequent to the meeting this afternoon, I don't know if you've seen it yet, but we all received an additional email from Tim Sadler summarizing his viewpoint on the participation in virtual net metering. So when we get down to new business, authorizing the first selectman to sign a letter of intent for prospective participation, I'm going to request that the board postpone action on that particular item until a later meeting, so that we actually have some additional information in hand to be able to do that. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get there. Josh, do we have any other subcommittees that we need to talk about?
No, we have no other subcommittees that have met since the last meeting,
Okay.
although there are, of course, a few items that will be coming up
Yep.
at future subcommittees. Yeah.
Okay, John Toomey, are you on the call to update us on the Memorial Day commemoration report?
Yes. I wish the world was different. We would have had a parade. We had a lot planned. The one thing that we're able to keep from the original parade was our Grand Marshal, John Robato, a World War II veteran. We managed to get him to come up to the town green for our videotaped observation of Memorial Day. It's a different process. The whole event was originally going to be filmed on Memorial Day itself, but I'm glad that the decision was made to move it to Friday so that the videotape could be available to the public on the actual Memorial Day. And Mr. Robato was able to be there. We managed to have a very, very few crowds based on what the public health officer and the governor's recommendations were for crowd size. We were fortunate that the prevailing winds were blowing over John, and we were not near enough to him to worry about any contaminations amongst us all. There were no handshakes, there was no hugs, which is totally unusual for Memorial Day. I want to thank Community Voice Channel for videotaping it and providing it on time on 10 o'clock on Memorial Day for everyone in town to see. And I hope you've seen it. we were lucky to have the Bolton congregational minister provide an opening and closing prayer virtually. And he went to his grandfather's grave and offered both of those prayers. We were fortunate that our town administrator has been gifted with a beautiful voice, and he sang our national anthem. Unfortunately, we couldn't have any children that perform. There was no God Bless America, no America the Beautiful. There was no student speech, high school senior class speech. There was no students to give either the Gettysburg Address or in Flanders Field, but we compensated. When Bobby and Sandy and I were in 8th grade, our history teacher taught us to memorize the Gettysburg Address. We split it in roughly equal, 4 sentences roughly each, and I think we made Mrs. Halloran proud. And Mrs. Roboto, virtually from memory, she recited in Flanders Field. I hope people have seen it. It went off, and if I'm allowed to, Jim and I will produce an actual parade with floats and cars and bands and the way we intended it. And if dear Mr. Roboto was still alive, I think he should be the parade marshal in 2021. Anybody have any questions?
No, I just want to say if anyone has not yet had the opportunity to view that, it is available on the cvcct.org website. And it's worth the 20 minutes of your time to view it. So thank you, John.
Well, thank you for letting us do it. It was an honor. My granduncle David was one of the ones that first started putting flags on the graves decades and decades and decades ago. And it's nice to be able to do a little something like what he would have done.
Okay.
So thanks.
Moving on to item 6C, Properties and Facilities Report. Josh or John Butchermovich, do we have anything there?
Not only do we have John Butchermovich, but we also have Jim Rupert on the line. And between the two of them, I know that they recently conducted a final inspection of our town garage. I don't know if both or either of you would like to speak to that. Not to put you on the spot or anything.
Sure, this is Jim.
He had
We had a very small checklist of items to go through. They should be working on those. We'll be doing a re-inspection very soon.
Very good, thank you. Open space management and acquisition, we'll be talking about that a little bit later. Lower Bolton Lake report. Jim, as emergency management director, do you have anything to say about that? Or do you want me to talk about it?
I'm really here in a support role, Sandy. I'll let you talk. I'm here to answer any questions
Okay.
you might have and whatever we can do to offer assistance.
Okay, thank you.
Sandy, I'm happy to speak too.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, but I can just let
ahead,
everybody.
Josh.
Sure, I can let everybody know that there was an instance where, and this occurred in Vernon, just so that everybody has this piece of information. There was an instance in Vernon in which there were a number of sightings of different algal blooms that were reported to the health district, or a number of different reports, I should say. And there was one report in particular that stated that there was a dog that had become sick as a result of potential contact with algae. So as a result of that, there was a test that was conducted. Those results were sent on to our health district, as well as to DEP, and together they've decided that an advisory is the proper point of response that we are at, informing people that there is algae that's been detected in the lake. However, the lake remains open for recreation as long as folks are very conscious of the fact that algae may exist, that they're avoiding areas where algae is visibly present, and it's recommended that pets stay away if possible. Obviously, drinking water with algae in it is going to potentially make an animal sick, pet or not. Beyond that, I can pass it over to Sandy or answer questions.
This is not the blue-green. This is your typical algae bloom springtime.
No, this is blue-green.
Yeah.
Oh, it is blue-green.
It
Yes,
is
it is.
blue-green.
Okay, that's, okay.
And Northeast Aquatic Resources, also known as NEAR, will be testing on a weekly basis for us. And also, there was an incident at the lake yesterday. No, help me, Mike. Monday?
Sunday, I believe.
That where an individual was operating a boat on the lake well in excess of 6 miles per hour, which is the limit. And the speed limit rather, stood up in his boat, fell over, managed to sink the boat. They were rescued by another fisherman on the lake, taken to shore. The fire department responded, and there were no injuries. I haven't heard whether the boat is still on the bottom of the lake or not. But the Journal Inquirer tonight, in true JI fashion, managed to get some of the facts wrong and said that gas motors are prohibited on the lake when in fact they are not. But motors larger than 6 horsepower are prohibited, and it appears based on the photo that the rescue boat had a motor much larger than 6 horsepower. However, it also had an electric motor on it, so I don't know what they were operating at the time. But the key here is that there was a quick response. Nobody was injured, and we're happy to move on.
Sandy, the gentleman that, well, the first thing, to my knowledge, the boat is still in the lake. I don't know what the disposition is going to be of that. The second thing, the gentleman's boat that was in the picture does have a little bit bigger than 6 horsepower. It's actually 150 horsepower and has been clocked at 72 miles an hour. But he was using a trolling motor on our lake to fish. So he was going well under the speed limit.
Excellent. Thank you for that clarification.
No problem.
And thank you for your service going up there to rescue. It
Not a
could have been
problem.
a true disaster.
Yes, it could.
Moving on to the fiscal 20 budget report, Josh.
Absolutely. If you don't mind holding on just 1 second. Can everybody see this?
Mm-hmm.
There
Excellent.
we go.
So I'm very excited to say that you see no yellow lines, because there is, and for those of you who are just joining us, I typically go through a list of different departments and boards and commissions in town where the budget is all laid out for the selectmen. And I identify lines in which the department is overexpended over the past 3 years and is beyond the current percentage of the way through the year that we are. So right now we're talking about 11/12. So there is no department that meets those classifications. Right now we are doing better than anticipated. We have only 76.87% of the budget expended. And I believe that we are perfectly on target to finish out the year as projected and as reported to the Board of Finance just a month ago.
That's what they do.
Excellent.
And I also want to make the board aware that we did receive finally the state police bill for the current fiscal year, and it came in a little bit less than we had anticipated.
Good.
So you won't see that on this report here because the bill just arrived yesterday.
That's right.
So
At least they got it to you in the right fiscal year.
Yes.
well,
That's true.
for that we're grateful, and I think it may have something to do with Josh's persistence.
Okay, good.
I don't believe we have any other. Is there any other member of the Board of Selectmen who has other? Josh, have we received any other requests for public comment?
No, we have not.
Okay. Ongoing business, consider and act upon budget transfers and or appropriation requests. For your information, we've included in the packet that you received the list of appropriations that the transfers, budget transfers rather, that Josh and I had approved earlier this week or last week. They all get together in a while, but they were all well below the $5,000 limit that you had approved for Josh and I to approve. Are there any questions on these transfers that from May 21st? Hearing none, let's somebody try to speak there.
No.
Okay. Hearing none, let's move to the transfers that do require Board of Selectmen action.
And I can go ahead and speak to each one of these just a little bit. And if there are any specific questions, please feel free to chime in.
Sure.
So the first matter in front of you that I have highlighted on the screen, it's a request for $9,903.83 to be transferred from regular payroll in the admin budget to building improvements in town building operations. And the purpose of this is to develop a remote screening process in town hall. This will allow for a total of 5 cameras to be installed, 3 at individual doors that the public commonly make use of, and 2 on the my understanding is the very outside of the building, looking in towards the parking lot. And this will allow us to have an intercom capability all wired in as opposed to the rechargeable makeshift intercom system that we have developed right now. And it will also allow us to open and close doors or lock and unlock doors remotely from the safe distance of our desk. And I know that there's been a lot of conversation in town about wanting to maintain staff and the public safety. Surely for in the time of COVID-19, having an ability to allow folks to enter the building without having to stand within 6 feet of that person is going to be very helpful. And for a very small amount of money that we do have at our disposal, thanks to a prolonged absence in the administrator's office, as we had one staff member leave us and another one hired several months later. I want to make use of this and ensure that our staff is as safe as possible. So that's
Josh, one question.
Yes.
I think it's great. It's not questioning what you're doing. Where is this being monitored? Obviously you have your camera. You must have it. Do you have it monitored in one spot or in a couple of offices, or haven't you gotten that far yet?
John knows a little bit more about the system itself. My understanding is that, however, several individual computers will have the capability to access the cameras, computers within Town Hall, I should say.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that way we can have several different employees have the chance to check in with the folks who are coming from the outside. Yep.
Good, thank you. That was my concern, that because you're so split up, that's important. Good,
right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Not a problem.
Does it have recording capability?
That is the one thing I am not sure of. I believe that it has an ability to record. At this point in time, I do not have any plans to keep those recordings, but that could change. If need
It
be.
does have the capabilities, though.
Okay. All right. Thanks, John. I had thought so, but
Do we
Okay.
need a separate motion on this?
We
if
need
you'd like to
separate
break out
motions.
the separate motions, you're certainly welcome to. Otherwise, I know that in the past we've had blanket motions as well. If you'd like to go ahead and motion to approve all or a portion of them.
So this is pretty important and significant. I'll recommend that we do, that I would move that we approve this.
Okay, it's been moved to approve the $9,903.83, moving from regular payroll admin to building improvements, town building operations. Is there a second?
Yes.
Second.
It's been seconded by Bob Mora. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That's unanimous. Thank you. Josh, next item.
Absolutely. The next item is a small one, but I figured that since it had come up and Sandy and I haven't discussed it yet, it might as well bring it all to you. The ask is from the Conservation Commission. It's to move $35 from office and operating supplies to their other payroll so that they can have enough money to pay a board clerk for an additional meeting. So that's the request.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Seconded, Kim.
All right.
I second.
Moved by Mike Aramita, seconded by Kim Miller, to move from office operations to other payroll. Conservation Commission, the sum of $35. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Very good. The next two both come from the fire department. The first one is in the sum of $2,900 from other professional services to vendor maintenance. And the rationale for it is that there are four new tires are needed on the rescue truck. And this transfer would allow it to happen in this fiscal year.
I'll move that.
Is there a
I'll
second?
I'll second.
Mike, could you put your other hat on and explain to me why this wasn't a budgeted item?
I can't. I don't know why, other than when the vehicle was in for annual inspection, it was detected that the tires needed to be replaced.
Thank you.
Why are they so expensive?
It's everything, Bob, unfortunately. They're rather large tires carrying a significant amount of weight, and they're about between like $700, something like that a piece. It's ridiculous, but it's.
Here's what it is.
I wish they were a lot cheaper. It is what it is. I'm sorry.
Okay. Any other discussion on this motion? All those in favor of transferring $2,900 from other professional fees to vendor maintenance in the fire department, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That's also unanimous.
Good. The next on the subject of the fire department is a $1,435.39 transfer from repairs and maintenance to vendor maintenance. The rationale for this being that money is needed to fix the inoperative spotlight at the end of the ladder on truck 134.
I can speak to that a little bit. That's a light that's been a problem for a couple of years now, and several attempts to repair it in different ways have failed. So it's time to replace it with a different type of light, one that won't cost a lot every couple of months to get fixed. it's going from a halogen to an LED type light.
Okay.
Good. I can keep reading if you'd all like me to go ahead and do that, or we can
Yep,
take
keep
another
going.
motion. Okay.
You want to do it? Okay, whatever.
Okay. The next line is a transfer of $19,500 from professional and technical services in the administration budget to the medical supplies town building operations budget. And these monies would be used, and please feel free to jump in, Mike, because really you've been spearheading this. But there are several AEDs in our possession as a town that have to some extent expired. And in order to avoid any future technical failure, it's recommended that we go ahead and replace all of these. I believe actually the total cost that came in is a little under 19,000.
Yes, it is. It's actually 18,966.74 cents, and they're not actually to town buildings. We went out the other day at Sandy's request to check our town buildings and our schools, and the AEDs in our town facilities and schools are in good shape and are up to date and have no problems. These will replace the ones in the fire department. The fire department maintains an AED on 6 of its pieces of equipment, the 2 service trucks and all 4 of the heavy pieces of equipment. And there are a few more that are scattered throughout the town in personal vehicles such as mine. I kind of cover the south end of town with an AED. The chief has one up on the hill, and we scatter them throughout the town in members' vehicles, usually officers, to respond quickly rather than me going to the town center of town to get an AED and return back to the south end of town. It's quicker just to go there and do rapid AED defibrillation. This came to light when our EMS officer had sent a unit in for repair and was told, and I can quote here, all customers with LifePak 500 devices, regardless of age or frequency of use, are a potential safety issue. The need for replacement is imminent, is immediate. Apparently, they will come up with a wrong reading and tell you that a shock is not advised or that the patient can't be recognized. We will have a couple of units left when this is done that aren't of the same vintage, which could be used for spares or spares at a town building should the need arise when one of those goes out for repairs or batteries. There is an advantage to these new units. The old units, the pads that are used in the LifePaks, which we have 10 of them scattered around, takes 2 pads in each unit, a pediatric and an adult, and the total cost of those pads together is about $200, and they're good for a year or 2 tops. The new ones, the pads are combination because the machine has a sensor button that you push for pediatric or adult, and the pads are $125 and they last 4 years. So in a 4-year period of time using our old machines, we would spend $8,000 on pads alone. So there is a benefit savings to replacing these, even though they're, had we kept them, it would cost us $8,000 every 4 years just for the pads. So we're in kind of a situation where we have to replace these, unfortunately.
I think this is very important, and I would move that we approve the transfer.
I'm not going to second it because of my.
No, I'll second
I
it.
will second. Oh,
Okay, go ahead, Kim.
no, doesn't matter. I second.
Okay.
All right. Is there any further discussion on this?
Is there any special training that is required with the new version?
Yes, there is a little bit of training that will be required, but it will be very little. We'll do it in one of our EMS evenings. We'll go through the new units and they'll all go on as a group. These are far easier to use than the old ones, to be perfectly honest.
Thank you.
And I think they're a good addition to our equipment.
Thank
Okay,
you, Mike.
oh.
Hope I don't need it.
Yeah, I hope we don't
Yeah,
need it too. You're
Me
right.
either. I
hope
hope
we.
nobody needs it, but I want it in Mike's truck if it is.
Yep.
All those in favor of this transfer from professional and technical services admin to medical supplies town buildings for $19,500, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That's unanimous. I'll talk about the next one, which is a transfer to the employee separation fund from health major medical employee benefits. We are anticipating that there will be a significant savings in the health and major medical other than what we have already promised to the Board of Finance due to a reduction of overall costs this past year and several employees declining health insurance and several employees being gone for a significant amount of time. Last year, we came very close to draining our employee separation fund with the separation of our administrative officer. So we need a healthy boost, and this should get us through any potential retirements that may occur in our next fiscal year.
I'll move that. If you're taking them individually, I'll move that one that we do it. And also we have a smaller one that we bypass. I'll bundle them together so we can.
Josh and I can do the other one, but if you'd like to bundle it, that's fine.
Well, don't bother. That's okay. We'll skip that. Just go back. I'll move that we approve the transfer to $60,000 from health and major to employee separation. Good move, has to be done. And it's always good to keep that funded because we have a lot of folks up there in the near retirement category.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Oh.
Oh, go ahead, Kim.
No. Go ahead. I have a question too when we go ahead.
Seconded by Mike Aramita. Kim, go ahead with your question, please.
So, sorry if my memory is not serving me very well, but I thought we planned for these transfers. Is it that we do plan on doing it, but we just make sure we didn't need the money somewhere else if something
Correct.
came up? Or okay.
Correct.
So this is a planned thing right here. It's just now we're actually executing it.
Correct.
Got it. Okay, that's what I thought.
Had we needed it earlier, we may have done the transfer earlier, but so far we have not needed it this fiscal year.
Okay. Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, all those in favor of the transfer from health major medical employee benefits to the employee separation fund, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That is also unanimous. Josh, other contracts, town clerk, are you here?
Yep. Yes, I am. Sorry, we just have 3 more proposed transfers. This first one is from regular payroll admin in the amount of $4,945 to other contracts town clerk. And a project that was approved by or tentatively approved by the Board of Selectmen with this upcoming year's FY21 budget request was to kick off an electronic codification project, which will allow for our town ordinances and regulations to become codified and really be more accessible and more transparent and more referenceable online. So in order to have a professional firm come in and do that for us, we can kick that off right now in this fiscal year and get a lot of work done with this transfer.
It doesn't need action, right?
No, it does not.
Okay. That's a good idea, good move.
Okay.
Josh and I can approve it because it's barely under the $5,000.
Yeah. The next line is move of $7,000 from professional and technical services to legal services in the same department. And this is due to the fact that we have several legal matters that I know the board has been made aware of that have cost a little bit more time and obviously a little bit more money than we had originally certainly hoped and planned for in this case. And a reasonably sized transfer of $7,000 should help to cover all of the money that we need for the rest of the year. And if it does go over that amount, it would be a very small amount that could be approved by Sandy and I beyond that point.
Motion.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
Go ahead, Kim. Wait.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That's also unanimous. Last,
we have a $12,000 transfer proposed from professional and technical services in the administration budget to professional and technical services in the building and land use budget. And we have been making great use of our Director of Community Development, Patrice Carson, who's on the line right now. And in order to accommodate the town's needs, she has been working a little bit more than had been budgeted for this fiscal year. A transfer of $12,000 is requested to ensure that she can continue to do her work for the town and without any further pause in her work.
I'll move approval of the transfer.
is there a second?
Well,
I'll second. Sorry, I was on mute. I couldn't get off fast enough.
Mike, you're on mute.
Yeah. All right, it's been moved by Bob Morris, seconded by Kim Miller. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That also passes unanimously. Thank you. And we are moving off to item 8A. Jim Dwyer, are you on the call?
Yes, I am.
Would you like to introduce this to the Board of Selectmen?
Well, I hope everybody's read this letter that I wrote. But we need, elections committees need to move the polling place, hopefully to the Bolton Center School. And the reason I guess I got to, back up or put some more information into this. And what I have is, by law, the change of the location of a polling place has to be approved by the Board of Selectmen. By law, the primary and its subsequent election must be in the same place. And there has to be one voting booth for every 250 voters. We base this move on the floor plan of the November election. We cannot use the normal 6 booth tables set up. Even if we block off every other one, it just wouldn't work. With the COVID-19 social distancing requirements, we cannot set up more than 8 voting booths in town hall. We need a minimum of 12, and hopefully we'll set up 14. The town has 3,500 voters, so that comes up to 14. Voters in the election normally form 2 lines. The hallway into town hall polling place is only, it's barely 6 feet wide, maybe a little over, but also the tables we use for the checkoff, ballot clerk and assistant registrars and moderator tables are too close together and cannot be spaced properly. If a voter needs the assistance of the moderator or the registrars, this would make a tight situation even tighter and untenable. Okay, so we're proposing that the primary election be moved to the Bolton Center School. The gymnasium auditorium has ample space needed to spread out our poll worker stations and the voting booths. It would offer a logical path for the voter to come in and leave. There are no steps or stairs going into this building. It's on one level, and parking would be plentiful. And if you have any questions, I can take them.
Andy?
Mike, go ahead.
Yes, I have a couple of concerns. One being if for some reason, well, hopefully school will be open again and we will be under a whole new way of doing things. If it is, we'll be masked and everything else like that. And they will be using extreme measures for cleaning. Have you spoken to the superintendent and her staff, meaning John, as to the ability to clean the school properly after? Will there be time to do an adequate cleaning that will make the superintendent and John Bertramovich comfortable that the students can return into the building the following, whether it's was it the following day or over the weekend? I don't know what it is. I haven't looked that far ahead.
They're both Tuesdays.
So they would be coming back to school the next day, or is that a vacation?
So they would be coming, sorry, my understanding is that they would be coming back to school the very next day. And we have been told that I believe by 8:30, we need to make sure that we have everything cleared out because gym class will be starting up. And after speaking with Kristen about this, and John, certainly feel free to chime in, but I believe that it will probably take some overtime on our part, but I believe that we can feasibly make sure that that space is cleared for them.
I have one more question, and that is, if we make this change, does it have to be for upcoming elections going forward forever? Because I'm really attached to having voting in the town hall, and I would hate to see that portion of our town's heritage lost. So can we make this for just this one voting primary and major election and leave the rest where it is?
Right now, this would be just for this voting season.
Okay.
I
We
know,
can make that part of our motion. And we keep it legal for you so you can have it at the school.
I have more to put into there. We can't hold our budget referendums in the school because they have session.
Right.
So that would probably still be at town hall. All this depends on how well we get over these virus, the pandemic.
Yeah, it's obviously that it is dependent upon the social distancing requirements that are there. Obviously, this year it's the entire year, so this to me seems like almost a no-brainer alternative that we're going to have to go forward with. But I kind of agree with Mike. In the future, I would prefer to have it back at the town hall. But if what you're asking here, and I believe I'm reading it correctly, it is having the board approve the polling place for both the primary and the presidential election to be moved to the Bolton Center School, used as community room. If that's the right terminology. I'm willing to make that a motion to move this forward.
One quick thing. I think community room is wrong if you're talking about the gymnasium.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering if it's the gymnasium or not.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yes. Sorry. I just wanted to add in that, yes, it is the gymnasium that we looked at. There are a number of different rooms that would be utilized by the registrars and their staff that day for breaks and things of that nature. But the polling itself, we were looking at the gymnasium.
Then I'll rephrase my motion that we move it to the Bolton Center School Gymnasium.
We do have a member of the public who has texted me. I suppose the motion's been made.
No one seconded it yet, so.
Once
True.
it's seconded, why don't
Right,
you include that in the discussion?
Okay.
Sure.
Question I have is November 3rd. Will if the students are back in session, how will the presidential election take place?
School is closed on presidential election day. That became a state law, I want to say a year or two ago.
Okay.
If it's okay with everybody, I believe that this individual is on the call who has asked for some public, to make a public comment. Didn't exactly identify themselves with name and address, so I'm going to ask that as soon as I unmute, you please do so. But the number that I have is 860-558-9841. And you are now unmuted.
Okay, it's Rod Fournier, 4 Hanover Farms Road. And I would like to say that the middle school is a good place to have the voting for the presidential election and the primaries. But I'm hoping that it doesn't go any further than that. If it's necessary that we have them for our budgets, then we'll have to come up with another plan. That's all I wanted to put in. Thank you.
Okay, so I believe we have thank you, Rodney. I believe we have a motion on the floor that's been made by Bob Mora. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Go ahead, Kim.
I've seconded everyone. You go, Mike.
No.
Let's all look at it.
Okay.
All right, so it's been moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, I believe the motion was to move the presidential preference primary on August 11th and the presidential election on November 3rd, both in the year 2020, to the Bolton Center School Gymnasium. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That passes unanimously. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda is authorizing the first selectman to sign the letter of intent for a prospective participation in a virtual net metering program. I alluded to this earlier today at our subcommittee meeting today. We voted to not ask the Board of Selectmen to act on this tonight, but rather to defer it to a future meeting.
Make a motion to defer?
I don't think we need a motion. I think we can
Okay.
do it by consensus,
Okay.
unless there is an objection. Does anyone on the Board of Selectmen object to the postponement? Hearing none, well, let's move on to the 2020 opening of Indian Notch Park. Josh put together a rather nice summary for you. And I hope you've had some time to read it. What I'd like to do is start with questions for Josh, if you have any. We also have John Butramovich on the phone for questions on that side, and Jim Rupert as well from an emergency preparedness situation.
Just a comment, after reading them all, it was pretty depressing because it really points out the difficulty, extreme difficulty of trying to open that facility and still maintain the guidelines that the state has required of us. I don't, I'd like to have input from Jim as well, but as I look at this, particularly, I just can't see how it can possibly be open in June or July unless all those social distancings disappear for August. It appears that even if you open it and require distancing, to have, we hire part-time staff during the summer. That's a terrific burden to be putting on the staff people to help maintaining that and controlling the flow in there. I think it's a shame. I would hate to see it close, but just looking at what you have here, Josh, for me, I think it's going to be exceedingly difficult, if not impossible, to open. But I'd like to hear either John's comment or Jim's comment on that.
John,
Jim,
you want to go first?
Yeah.
It'll definitely be putting a burden on us.
Johnny, you done?
Yeah.
That's short to the point.
Yep, it sure was. I kind of agree with Bob. I've seen just in the last week, many people who are refusing to wear masks and keep their social distance because they believe everything is over as we begin to come out of this a little bit. We're not over by any stretch of the imagination, as we know from our weekly meetings with the town unified command group and everything else. I don't think that you'll be able to, or at least a teenage or college age student will be able to control what may go on down there. And I wouldn't want to put them in that position.
And coupled with the fact that the state has closed all their lakes as far as swimming facilities for the season. And that means if this were open, the pressure on this thing would be beyond anything we've seen in the past.
The state has closed all their lakes for the season? I don't think I knew that. Okay. Oh, geez.
Inland
All right.
waterways, yep.
More specifically in our area, Gay City is closed for swimming.
Yes.
This is all for swimming, right?
It remains open for, Gay City remains open for hiking.
Right.
And what is our, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Kim.
No, I was just I'm changing the topic slightly, so you finish.
No, by all means, go.
Oh, so what is our responsibility if people are not meeting the social distancing requirements? Like the part at the bottom about, enforcement. What is our responsibility in terms of enforcement?
We are not obligated to enforce the law, I don't believe. Jim Rupert, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's a job of the state police if they choose to do so. But
yes, you're right, Sandy. So our job would be to educate people and ask for compliance by seeking it, with people who are capable and firm. And if they choose not to follow those directions, our recourse would be to contact the state police for further enforcement.
What would become difficult, Jim, is if you have a teenage lifeguard or a young adult lifeguard down there and asks somebody to move because another person has requested that they move because they're too close. That individual is going to be in a tough situation until police can arrive. And as we know, they're not always in the immediate area. And I wouldn't want to see us put a young person in that position where they're stuck between two people that are fighting or, trying to just maintain order there is going to be difficult.
It is certainly one of the challenges that we discussed when we had a group meeting about this ahead of time. And, we recognize that if the park is going to be open, we really have to put our heads together and try to meet these challenges head on. And unfortunately, we came to the conclusion that if we do this, it will be at a financial loss to the town, that there's no way we can break even and meet all of these guidelines and goals.
Now, and one thing that did come up on our EOC calls is that the traditional bathroom, dressing room situation, which you don't think of as being an issue, really is practically impossible in our dressing room bathrooms at Indian Notch to maintain social distancing if there's more than one person in there at a time. So you basically would need a
door monitor.
A door monitor is a good thing for both the men's room and the women's room. So that's 2 additional staff people. And our health director recommended closing those facilities altogether and instead installing the porta potty situation and a hand washing station. But that just adds to the additional cost of running the facility. But I think we also have to take into consideration that if the park is not open, or in fact, even if the park is open and only 36 people are allowed in at a time, there's a large number of potential attendees who will be effectively locked out of the park and seeking to park their vehicles somewhere nearby and either walk in over the dam, which is potentially dangerous, or leaving their vehicles on Plymouth Lane, Linwood Drive, or Tolland Road, all of which, once parking is on the side of the road, become difficult to travel. And I think we run the risk of that, of the parking situation, even if the park is closed for the summer. So that needs to.
Now, do we know the reason that the state closed all their lakes? Was it the same types of things? Difficulty in maintaining? Yeah.
They weren't large enough.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a potential that the algae bloom will make all this moot?
There's always a potential. Right now, I think we're actually trending in a better direction, but this happened so early in the season that later in the season, you never know.
Yeah, I think Kim Welsh told us on our call a while back that this is at least 6 weeks earlier than we've ever had a bloom.
I think if it's my, my suggestion is that we don't go forward at this time with opening the park, seeing the conditions that we see at this time.
Do we know what other towns are doing, like Ellington, Crystal Lake?
The one town that I am aware of, Bob, is the town of Coventry, and I know that they are attempting to open up their lake. From the guidance that I read from them, I don't believe that they will be adhering to the 15-foot recommendation from the state that all blankets be kept, again, that 15 feet apart. I believe that they will be conforming to a slightly smaller scale that they have deemed appropriate.
And Josh, I think that information that we read from Coventry was before the state issued their 15-foot recommendation. So I honestly don't know where they are today, nor do I know where Vernon is or Ellington. Vernon at Middle Bolton Lake and Ellington at Crystal Lake.
Crystal Lake right now is closed, but I don't know what the story is for the rest of the year.
I do
Crystal
believe
Lake is
Columbia,
closed for the rest of the year?
No, I said they're closed currently. But
Oh.
I don't know if they simply haven't opened yet or they have closed.
I think Columbia Lake was opening as well.
The one thing I will reflect to all of you that I'm not sure is very well reflected in the paper information or the electronic information I sent you prior to the meeting. If you are interested in trying to take this on a more month-by-month basis, for example, if we were to revisit the conversation either at the beginning of July or the beginning of August, the big difficulty that we'll have at that time is trying to hire lifeguards on short notice. It's just a fact for your consideration. It certainly, if you all decide that we need to be opening at a later date, we will do everything that we can to hire those individuals. So this is certainly not me saying that it's impossible, but that will be a challenge down the road.
One of the differences in the lakes, like Columbia Lake is a residents only lake as far as their beach. I don't know about Coventry.
Coventry is as well.
And so is Ellington. And that's a big difference. And our issues really occur on the weekend because we're open to the public, and that's where the problem is going to be. And then with no one else open, I mean, that is the problem during the weekday. In the past, it's been local residents, and it was never really been that crowded. Weekends, as long as it's warm and hot, the place is packed and fills up early. And if you're going to be, the number of people you can put on there at that distancing is minimal. I mean, it's minimal, and the costs will be extraordinary. And that's the problem that I see, anyways. But if following Mike's mindset, if the criteria changed, at the end of this month, and we might be able to look at it. And then, Josh, I would say for us to look at it, if we were considering it, would be just checking on the availability of lifeguards before we could really make that move.
Right.
Josh, can you fill us in as to where the hiring process stands? Has the rec department identified potential candidates for these positions at the park?
My understanding is that former lifeguards at the park have been contacted and asked if they would be willing and able to come back. Kylene does believe, at least when I last spoke with her, that she has enough lifeguards to, even if we were to open up, not necessarily staff it 7 days a week, but rather a modified probably 5-day schedule. To go beyond that would be to have to hire on somebody who hasn't been at the park before. Which is, again, doable, but not something that we've gone ahead and tried to very actively solicit for at this point in time. So right now we have an opportunity to bring these individuals on, but they are waiting for the go-ahead from all of you as to whether or not we are opening the park or not.
A decision I don't want to make, but as we heard at the beginning of our meeting, we have to.
Right, and one of the biggest days, as John, is the 4th of July weekend. So whatever decision we make, even if it's short term, it should include that 4th of July weekend. So we're not once you get beyond that point, you might be able to consider opening, but for now, I would say we keep it. I would consider a move that we close it until the 15th, at least until the 15th of July. And then reconsider. I mean, that'll give us a chance to reconsider in July if circumstances change. I don't know. They may change rapidly. They may not. Will give us the option. And Josh, you can at that time, and John, we can let us know if it's, really feasible to open at that time. But instead of being a blanket, this way we'll work with what's happening statewide and what the state would allow. It may change, and we might be able to move forward. But
Is there a second to that motion?
I second that. This is
Okay.
Kim.
It's been seconded by Kim.
Yeah.
Our next meeting is Tuesday, July 7th. July 15th is the following Wednesday. And this year, the 4th of July happens on a Saturday. So I'm not sure whether it's celebrated on Friday or Monday, but it will definitely be a 3-day weekend this year.
so we'll be beyond that. So
Yeah, so it'll be beyond that.
Sandy, I'd
Go ahead,
like
Mike.
I'd like to recommend that you be empowered to, which you can anyway, if things change between now and then, and it's the recommendation of Jim and John and Josh and everybody to open, that we hold a special meeting for that purpose, at any time between now and our July meeting to reconsider this issue, because I think it's something that we need to have in town, and we would have in town should this not be facing us. And if the situation changes rapidly, I think we should have a meeting and make a change. But other than that, I'll go along with closing it for till the 15th.
Okay, thank you, Mike. I certainly have no problem if when the governor opens things on June 20th or even thereafter, if we start getting more guidance from others, especially some who may have opened their beaches and not had issues, and have some solutions for us as well. Any other discussion on this motion?
no, I concur with what you, Sandy, both you and Mike are saying.
Okay. Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Bob DiPietro, are you here?
Yes,
Was that an aye?
yes.
Okay, thank you. That is also unanimous. Thank you all for that. Moving on to the changes in fiscal 2021 town capital or debt budgets. You will remember that at the last following the public hearing on the budget, the Board of Finance reduced the overall town budget, capital reserve budget, and debt budget by $25,000. Since then, Josh has identified, and we're currently in the process of a storage garage at the firehouse and the installation of windows at Bolton Center School, which comes to slightly more than the $25,000 there. Although Josh's recommendation to us is for $25,720, we only need to reduce the budget by $25,000. And it would be my recommendation that we cut the $25,000 from the capital improvement budget and leave the remaining 720 in the capital reserve where we had originally placed it. Actually, I'm sorry, capital improvements, not capital reserve. Capital improvements, totally different budget, Sandy. So.
I'll make a motion to approve.
All right, Mike's moved to move that the annual budget for the year ending June 30th, 2021 be amended to reduce $25,000 from the capital improvements section. Is there a second?
I second it.
All right, it's been seconded by Bob DiPietro. Any other discussion?
So tell me where we're getting the 25,000 to spend it this year?
From leftover various categories.
Okay, so we do have that funding.
Yes.
Yeah, and this is coming to you a little scattershot. We actually made some transfers at the last meeting that are helping with these projects. And now we're discussing the cut separately. So it's not quite uniform, but it's all going to the same end goal.
Okay.
Hopefully at some point, well, hopefully by our next meeting, we'll have a better idea of which accounts are actually underspent for this fiscal year.
And that money just goes back to the Board of Finance, right?
It actually goes back to the taxpayers of the town and stays in the general fund. We've committed an amount to the Board of Finance, which they use to reduce next year's mill rate by adding to next year's revenues.
Got it.
So, all right, all those in favor of reducing the capital improvements section of the budget by $25,000, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That's unanimous. The next item we have is the formal rejection of any donation of 170 Tamarack Drive to the town. Tamarack Drive, if my memory serves me correctly, is off of Villa Louisa Road and is only accessed, the Bolton portion of it is only accessed by going down Villa Louisa Road into Glastonbury and taking Tamarack back.
That's correct.
We've been approached by the attorney for the current owner of the property, where the state of Connecticut turned down the property for open space, but that was many years ago. I want to say there's a letter in the packet it's dated June 1990.
Right.
And this land does abut Gay City State Park, or at least I believe it does. So, and it is landlocked,
Right.
meaning that it cannot be accessed by anywhere other than from the one of the abutters properties.
I'm familiar with the site, Sandy, if I could speak to it.
Sure.
This is a parcel, and the subdivision was in 1989. And this was a back parcel of majority is wetlands. And the then developer offered it to the town, and the town says, what do we want with a piece of landlocked wetlands that we can't access? And they said, why don't you give it to the state of Connecticut? Lo and behold, state of Connecticut never basically said, no, we really don't want it. Now, the abutter, there are two abutters. One of the abutters would like to purchase it as simply as acreage to their property. It's almost, not sure, but 75 to 80% wetlands. It is non-developable. But to do it, because this thing was supposed to be given either to the town or to the state, the property owner would need a letter from the town stating that, no, we really don't want it. You can go ahead and do whatever you want with it, in essence. I hope that gives you some explanation, but it's there, been out. I actually looked at it in 1989 or 90 and made the recommendation, no way. The town can't act, the town has no way to access it unless you drop in on a helicopter. So it's no benefit. And the land trust, it was approached as well, and same situation. It's a piece of land that they simply couldn't access or utilize.
I do also know that Patrice Carson is on the call right
Yeah.
now, and that she's done some rather extensive digging into this matter. I don't know if you have anything to add to what's already been said, Patrice, but.
Only that as Bobby mentioned, the way it was approved, and there is a Mylar on file that said it is to be donated to the state of Connecticut. And I think that if anything else is to happen with it, the Planning Commission would have to act to correct that decision. So let's say, for example, the state decides that they don't want it. I mean, back then there was some issues as to, they had staffing limitations. You got the letter up right there. Thank you, Josh. That they weren't able to consider only their highest priorities. They have suggested that they would take another look at this. And I think if they took another look and decided that they didn't want it, then I think what could happen is the Planning and Zoning Commission could take action to do something other than keep it as open space. As if the town doesn't want it, the land trust doesn't want it. My only question was, and I think I know the answer to this, was back then, I don't believe the open space subdivision requirements were in place yet.
That's correct.
Okay.
So there was no required donation or compensation at that time. So that's why this thing is like in limbo. It was my understanding that it should have been addressed in the letter, but since I had worked with the attorney before on other things, that they went back to the state to see if they would take it again, and the answer second time was no. But that's their issue. But for us, as far as the Board of Selectmen wanting it, I can't see where we could do anything with it. I guess I'm not sure, Patrice, P&Z, what would, if the town doesn't want it, it's a landlocked piece of land, what are their actions required on this thing? I'm a bit at a loss.
I think we need to hear, number one, that the state didn't want it.
Okay.
I know Josh has sent paperwork over to the attorney for them to ask the state. I think the state's in a very different position nowadays than they were back in 1990. So they may actually want it at this point. I don't know. But if they said no, and we had something from them saying no, and the town said no, then I think it could go back. Whatever happens, I think the Planning and Zoning Commission would have to change the approval, so another map or something could be filed to correct what's in the land records and what was the approval at the time.
So why I'm asking this, so any action by the Board of Selectmen is meaningless?
It's meaningless.
I wouldn't,
if the town was going to take the land, let's say the state said no and the town decided they wanted it, which it doesn't sound like it happened. Then
Right.
you'd have the Planning and Zoning Commission change the requirement, and the Board of Selectmen would then take action to take the piece.
Okay, so, but if the board decides that we really don't want it, we can act on that now, and then P&Z can then act on it? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, they could act on it once they hear from the state.
Okay, thank you.
It sounded to me, the lawyer said, a formal rejection from us would be appreciated.
Yeah.
Why? Why do you need a formal rejection?
I can share with I can just share my conversations, if you'd like, Bob, with the attorney. And the concern was that the town, because this was offered up as open space, that should a butter purchase that, and the town came in and say, nope, we want it, and it would jeopardize the purchase and the whole process. The abutter just wants, quite frankly, to do proceed in a manner where there are no complications. It's a done deal, and that's the intent. I'm probably not explaining it properly, but they simply want to clear it up so they can be transferred, whatever the process. So if it means the beginning, it sounds like the beginning of the process would be the Board of Selectmen saying, no, it's a piece of property you really don't want, and then planning and zoning finishing it up from there, whatever they may want. Does that sound right, Patrice?
Yeah, I actually think the first process is to hear from the state, Bob, but
Well,
if the
assuming the state doesn't want it, let's put it this way.
Right, okay.
But I'm
So can I
saying,
ask a question? So isn't there a letter from the state saying they don't want it? I thought that was in the packet.
it is.
It is, but it's also dated in 1990.
So what, I mean, if they've already formally rejected it, why would we need to ask them again?
Because it was a
Are you
condition of
joking?
approval.
Okay.
It was a conditional approval of the subdivision that the land be given to the state, and it's on the record. And that has not been corrected. So if the state says at this point that they want it, it should be going to the state. If we get a letter from the state that says they don't want it, then it would require corrective action by the Planning and Zoning Commission and the filing of a new Mylar without that condition of approval.
Right.
Okay, they'd have to take it off the Mylar.
Right, because it's currently a condition of approval.
Oof,
That hasn't changed. That hasn't changed in all of these years.
How can they do, if the people that did the initial Mylar aren't around, how would they do that?
Well, because that went into the land records as a condition of approval
Right.
when the subdivision was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission, and that record stays good unless a subsequent action, unless a subsequent action changes that.
Yeah, okay, so they can, okay, so they'd have to file something that says, nope, that's no longer a condition on the.
Correct. That's why the Planning and Zoning
P and
Commission
Z would have to approve that.
have to take it up, right,
Yeah,
and change
okay.
that condition of approval.
Got it. Thank you for the explanation.
So it sounds like we have no interest in this.
Correct.
That's correct.
Then I'll move that we take action accordingly.
I'll second it.
All right. If I understand your motion correctly, Bob DiPietro, you've moved that we inform the attorney for the present owner that the town of Bolton has no interest in acquiring the property known as 170 Tamarack Lane, Tamarack Drive.
Thank you so much for saying that right.
Okay. Is there any other discussion on this?
I'm not on the board, Sandy, but I don't know if, I just want to make sure that they don't think that that's all they need to do. I just want to be sure that they understand there's still a process to go through, even if the Board of Selectmen is not in favor of taking the property.
That should be with a follow-up letter from Josh as to.
Okay.
Absolutely. And Patrice, I can work with you on the wording of that. You and Jim.
Okay.
Yeah, and maybe you and or Jim should be either a copied or a signer on that letter as well.
Absolutely.
Just so there's no ambiguity as to what the town's requirements are to let them move forward. So all those in favor of the rejection of the donation of 170 Tamarack Drive, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That's unanimous. Thank you. And next is a request for tax exempt status for the property located on Brandy Street, recently acquired by the Bolton Land Trust. And we had approved a temporary suspension of property tax back in January. And this is the formal approval.
Also move.
Go ahead, Bob, you got it.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second it, Sandy.
Okay, thank you, Mike. It's been seconded by Mike Aramita. Any discussion? I just want to note for the minutes that this previously had been forest land and the taxes collected by the town were very minimal. So it will not impact our revenues in any significant manner. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? That's unanimous. First Selectmen's report. Due to the hour, I'm going to just pass the torch here to Josh.
Andy. I will also try and keep it brief. First and foremost on COVID-19 preparations, I can tell you all that we are still on track. I've been keeping a very close watch on the numbers, both for our area, statewide, countywide, and we are continuing to trend in a direction that makes me feel comfortable having a partial reopening this coming Monday, June 8th. There is a slight concern of mine that the numbers may start to rise after that 14-day period passes past the partial reopening that began almost 14 days ago. So Jim and I, as well as others, Patrice included, will continue to be monitoring those numbers very carefully. And I think the beautiful thing about the plan that we've put in place is that while we will be taking a step in one direction on Monday, and I plan to do so, we can very easily take a step back. And I think that every staff member in Town Hall and at Notch Road Municipal Center is comfortable with the operations that fall within each of these steps. So what Monday is going to look like, in case you get questions, and this is a reiteration, I know that I've mentioned it to you all before, but in case you're getting questions from the public, Monday we will have one person in Town Hall and in Notch Road Municipal Center per department per day. We are breaking this up into 2 different weeks so that we have a quote unquote A team and a B team. These 2 groups will not be crossing over for the foreseeable future in any way. Meaning that, for example, if I'm on the A week and Jim is on the B week, we should never be in the same place at the same time. And that's to make sure that if one person ends up being diagnosed with COVID-19, we at no point in time have the entirety of town staff have to go and self-quarantine. It would only be half at any given point in time. So we will be having a staff meeting on Friday where we make that final determination and go ahead of saying that Town Hall will be reopening as planned. And I will certainly keep you posted as the numbers continue to come in.
Will access be people being buzzed in one at a time, or?
Right now, we're planning on having all outdoor access. So that means that there will be a number of people who, and we're already doing this to an extent. People may need to come in for marriage licenses. I know that people in Jim's office need to come in to sign certain documents. We've purchased a canopy. That was actually one of the transfers that Sandy and I had approved before this meeting, as well as, of course, we have some folding tables that have been brought outside so that we can have a very socially distant way of going about getting those signatures and making sure that folks don't have to come in and bring in any sickness to the building.
So would they buzz to come in, or do they call first to?
They would call ahead. We're trying to make sure that everything's done by appointment. If somebody does call in.
Okay, thank you. That's why
that's
I'm
right.
Don't call ahead for appointments. Okay.
Yes, please. Jim and Patrice, if you have anything else to add about COVID-19 preparations, please feel free.
Yeah, I think the important thing is that, we're trying to serve the residents and citizens that come to visit Town Hall at a very high level. And, you know, most of the information they need, they don't need to actually come in the building for anymore. We're doing the research, getting the documents that they need, and putting that information in the mail or faxing it or scanning it and getting it to them in a very timely fashion. So I think that operations will continue to move forward in a, you know, fairly robust fashion, but it will be a little easier for us having staff in every department on every day, because it becomes a little bit of a wait sometimes for folks when we say, well, you know, you need a septic plan for your home, but land use isn't in the office until Wednesday, so we'll have to wait till Wednesday. Well, that won't be the case any longer. So it is going to increase the level of service, and I think that's really the goal that we've tried to achieve here, in making that balance with the safety of both of our staff and of the residents of the town has been paramount.
I'd just like to add that the staff has been well informed as this has gone on, and when there has been concern raised, Josh has listened and included those concerns and issues in his thinking. So I think we've all sort of worked together toward this, and there's no real surprises. And I think we were fortunate at the start of this that we were so well virtually connected, the way we do things. I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but I know land use, you apply virtually. It's the only way you can apply for permits now. So that helped. And I've actually received a couple of letters, you know, thanking us for getting back to us so quickly, because people think we're not in the office and not working. But when you do, you know, when you're here and you get your stuff and you answer them, it's very well received. So I would agree with all the other things that Jim said as well.
Good. Thank you both. I think that unless there are any questions from the board, I think that concludes my comments on COVID-19 preparations. Sandy did also ask me to tell you a little bit more about two other items. The first of which is our progress on cemeteries. Right now, I know that's an item that we had really started to discuss before you know, we had a global pandemic, and it's something that we need to continue to focus on. I have heard reports from individuals in the community about the fact that it appears that there is a new team from the company that is servicing our cemeteries, and that team has been very respectful of the items that are left by gravesites, very respectful of the gravesites themselves, and has been cleaning up quite a bit of mess. So I'm hopeful that this marks a bit of a turning a corner. And to that end, we are going to be extending our contract at this point, probably through the end of the summer. And that will also give us more time to really dig in and draft an RFP should we still continue to deem it necessary for those services. The other item that Sandy had asked me to touch on pertains to the administrator goals that we had all set, and that is the report on the survey that was conducted. So this is fair warning. The full report is a little long, so I've made an executive summary for you all, but it is done at this point. I will be putting all but one appendix, which I need a couple finishing touches, into an email to you right after this meeting so that you have an opportunity to give it a look before it goes out to the public. If you have the chance to go through it in the next day or two, I can hold off on making it public for probably that amount of time. And you can certainly give any comments. And I am hoping that it's very educational for all of you, that you're all interested to see what it has to say. I think that some of it is probably about what you'd expect. And I think that you might be surprised by some other common answers. So, but it was certainly very interesting for me to write, though long, admittedly, and a long process. And I hope that you'll make good use of it. And we can certainly discuss it more at a later time. But that's my report for now, unless there are questions. In which case, I think we can move on to item 11, if there are no questions.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I
11.
thought I saw Bob DePietro try and unmute, but I'm not sure.
Josh, I was just going to ask you about the grant summary of ideas we put together at Coventry Senior Center.
The senior center, you said?
How,
Sorry, I think I missed that last bit, but
you got it.
okay, yep. So the senior center, I think that there were a lot of comments about the way in which some improvements can be made. I know that the senior center, members of the senior center also came together and submitted, separate of the survey, a number of different ideas that they have for future activities, future operations, things of that nature. I haven't included those comments in here. That's a separate report that Carrie can give to you.
No, I meant the Coventry Senior Center. Remember that grant we had the conference?
Oh, yes. I'm so sorry, Bob. I was thinking about the survey because that's what I've been thinking about for a while, obviously. Yes. So when we all got together, that's the 4-town economic development grant that we received. Patrice, you're certainly welcome to weigh in. The last I had heard was that the pandemic had certainly put things or slowed things down. I don't have a report to hand off to you at this point in time. I do also know that they were hoping to have a regional branding effort be released at the same time as the report. And my understanding is that that regional branding discussion and effort wasn't necessarily, it continues to need to be reviewed, I guess is probably the best way to put it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Motion to move in executive session?
Yep.
So move.
Is there a second to move into executive session for the consideration of land acquisition?
And to include Josh in the session.
Good night, everybody.
I'll second.
Good night. All of those in favor of entering into executive session, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, abstentions, that's unanimous.